Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in Mark from the 500. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Double horns to you, my friend. It is a Friday, and it is a good day to be with you. You know, l- feel really lucky to catch up with artists. A year and a half ago, all my interviews were in person or over the phone, and Zoom was not a
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And now we get to be in each other's houses and see each other in person and communicate this way. So it's really awesome. The 500 recently released your new album, A World on Fire, on Long Branch Records, a very excellent record label. We feel very lucky to be associated with, cover a lot of their artists. So congratulations on the release of that album. What a strange time in the world to put out new music, but I'm glad you have because it gives us something to connect about.
Oh yeah. It's been a hell of a last 2 years for us. We were I think we were one of the lucky ones really because we see a lot of friends in bands that we've toured with and friends that are in other bands, and they had to keep like canceling tours, canceling awesome shows, and that was really hard to see. But we were quite lucky in that we were always planning to knuckle down and write and record the album during this period anyway. So we had no tours planned, no gigs, and we purposefully just blocked out like 12 months to write the album from scratch and record it. So I don't want to say it too loud because I know a lot of people had a hard time, but we were quite lucky in that respect, and we get to release the album just as we're lifting our head out of the pandemic somewhat, at least in this part of the world.
I interviewed another artist recently who was like, I hate to sound like this. I'm an introvert, and the pandemic was good for me because I didn't have to go out and see people anymore. And I could just stay home and make music. And I was like, I can't really argue with that. That sounds pretty good if you're an introvert.
Yeah, yeah, that's great for him. I can't relate to that in that respect because I'm definitely an extrovert. I need to be around people. So
Me too.
yeah,
Me too. I went 511 days without a show. I will never get that time back. I'm an older dude, and I feel like the hourglass is flipped over, and there's a finite amount of shows left in me. And I'm like, no, don't take away my shows. Take anything else.
exactly. We had a few people come back to us. We played our album launch show a few weeks ago, and we had a few people saying exactly that, saying I can take the lockdowns, I can take not being going to shops, not going to bars, not going to eat out or whatever, not going to work and working from home. Great, but it's the gigs, it's the shows that you really miss. So we hear that from a lot of people.
Right on. And then, so what was that show like for you? Just out of curiosity, how was your comfort level ready to play that show?
It was weird, man. It's like we normally feel very excited and confident going on the stage, but like the night before, and during the day leading up to the show, thinking, man, like what do we do now? Like where does this plug in? Like after 18 months of not playing a show, but as soon as you plug in and you hit that first note and everyone starts going for it and you're having a good time, then all that just melts away, and it was awesome. We woke up the next morning with a bad head, thinking, did that really happen last night? Playing actual shows again. So it's great to
Right.
be back.
Maybe it was a fever dream. And we were all, yeah, my first show back was also a similar experience. I was like, I don't know. I guess I'm going to just stand in the corner and do this a lot and just, enjoy the music and you know, keep my fingers crossed and watch people wild out. And it was great. We're dying for that rush. We need that sound. We need that vibe back.
Absolutely.
So congrats that you got to play your release show. That's really cool. Your record just came out, like I said, less than a month ago at the time of this recording, and just really awesome. Let's dial it back for a second. Since this is our first time meeting, let's hear about the history of the band a little bit and just take us back, like just how you guys formed up through sort of the Cliff's Notes version. If you had an origin story of your superhero comic book issue one.
Right. So Andy, a bass player, and I grew up together in a little town in the south of Spain, Gibraltar. And we were like, we felt like we were the only metal kids at school, because there wasn't really much of a metal scene. So we grew up together playing in bands, playing in rock and metal bands. And then as soon as we were old enough, we moved over to the UK because there's a real buzzing metal scene over there. And we've been there for the last couple of decades now. We came over together and we thought we always wanted to form a band, and we started just recruiting. Like, we need a great singer, we need a great drummer, we need a great guitarist, and we just started recruiting people from other bands that we saw that weren't going anywhere or that were falling away. So that became the 500 a few years later. we've been together as the 500 for about 7 years now, 6-7 years. And that's about it, really. We basically moved to another country just to start up because we didn't see much of a scene. So and I hear that from a lot of people playing guitar, playing drums, singing. They're in a band and thinking, "I want to be in a band, but there's not much of a scene in my town." My advice to them is to get out, find the nearest city, the nearest place that's got a vibrant scene, and just make it your own.
As you do, go where the scene is. Sometimes I'm a big fan, like, oh, make a scene, but sometimes you can't make a scene. It's just not possible. So I like the drive right there to make sure you can be somewhere that has a scene. And good on you for it. The 500 is a very unique name. I wanted to ask the origin of it. I'm sure you haven't been asked that 10,000 times.
No, thanks. Yeah, it came about. We played a show once, and there was a journalist there that said we had such a huge wall of sound. We pride ourselves on having a huge, thick sound, played on 8-string guitars. Everything sounds very tight, very heavy. And the journalist wrote a review about us, a glowing review, saying they really dug us, and it sounded so big that it didn't sound like 5 guys on stage. It sounded like 500. So we thought that's kind of cool. We're gonna stick with that, and we call ourselves the 500.
That's fun. Sometimes we get it right and help. Sometimes we're not helpful at all. The general consensus has been positive for you guys. I don't really look at other websites much, but you sort of nose around, and the publicist sends along, this is what they think of you, and this is what the press is saying. And so it's cool to see like the glowing and positive reviews for the album and in general. So congrats on that. That's really good.
Thanks.
And helpful. And you guys have done some pretty big stuff, a lot of festivals, download, toured a little bit. So, this is not your first rodeo, as the terrible American expression goes.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a crazy album launch. We had a great reception to our first album that came out in 2018, and yeah, so we just built on that for the second one, and we've been blown away by the response. We felt that we always had something special in the can, but then the reaction from press and from fans has been mind blowing. So now we just got to go out there and tour with it.
That's the next step, obviously. If you had to get it, obviously you want to book headline shows, of course, but if you had to ask for a dream tour, who would you love to open for when the world reopens fully and we're out of this thing?
Wow, what a question. I guess if you asked each and every one of us, would be a different answer. But if you were to ask me, my all-time favorite band to tour would have to be Meshuggah. They were a big influence on us, and a large part of the reason why we went on to 8-string guitars and why we play the music we do. You always try to keep it catchy, but there's always that technical complexity to it. So yeah, that's a Meshuggah for me.
Nice work. Yeah, they are working on a new album. I'm so hyped. I can't wait. Every Meshuggah record is like my birthday on another day of the year.
Exactly. It's always such an event, isn't it? I get so hyped up about it. Get super excited.
Right on. Who are some of your other influences besides Meshuggah? I mean, I can listen to the record and I have an idea from the whole band. Like when I hear I hear some progressive metal, I hear some extreme metal, I hear some gent, I hear all that stuff. But like if you were to throw like a blanket over the band and say it's this, so fans could be like, oh, well, maybe I will like this.
I guess we've been described as Meshuggah, for fans of Meshuggah, Killswitch Engage, After the Burial. Those 3 bands. If you ask our singer John, he's massively into the grunge era in the 90s. So he'd cite Lane Staley and Alice in Chains as an influence. I think you can hear that a lot in his vocals. So for fans of Meshuggah, Killswitch Engage, After the Burial, and Alice in Chains.
That's pretty killer. I love all those bands, and I hear that in John. John's a terrific vocalist, man. You picked a winner. He's got a very good range, and he can do a lot of different things with his voice. So that's important.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I know John from way back. I think I've known him for 20 years now. In fact, I met John. He used to work in a bar at my local in Nottingham, where I live now. And I always used to just sit at the bar and have a drink with him, and he'd have the jukebox on, and he just used to be serving at the bar and just singing all night long. Thinking, this guy's fucking killer. I need to start playing with him one day. And a few years later, he went touring to Australia, and then he came back and said, yeah, I'm looking for a new band. So like, yep, we'll have you. So that's the story of how I met John and how he got me into the band.
That is amazing, dude. That's a great story. That's a story you should tell at a bar with a singing bartender. You already have one. Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's like, again, it's hard. I always find it's like drummers are the hard people to find in a band because, it's just such a commitment to the drums as an instrument and also just the gear. So I always found when I played a biz that drummers were the hardest to find.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, we stole Kelsey, our drummer, from one of the bands that we used to gig a lot with. We love those guys, but yeah, if they're listening, sorry we did that. Still love you though. But yeah, we played a few shows with them around the Midlands in the UK, and we kept having our eye on Kelsey. And at the time, he was only like 17 or 18, he was barely old enough to get into a bar. And we thought this guy's absolutely killer. We need to recruit him one day. And then when he said that he was thinking of moving on to another band, that's when we snatched him.
That is how it happens, man. That's as you do, as you
Yeah.
do. Again, drummers are hard to find. If you can find one, hang on to them, ply them with drinks, promise them things you can't deliver. It's hard to keep. It's like a hot girl. It's hard to keep a drummer. Man. It's hard. Hard
Hell
to.
yeah.
Or a hot guy, if you like, or whatever. Yeah. Whatever your pleasure. Yeah, man. So just super stoked on this record. I hope a lot of people get to hear it. And I hope we can help with that because it's I like to spread the word of emerging bands. It's important. Like, listen, we all love the classics. We all love the huge bands. We go to the big fests. We love the big bands, but like, what's the future of music look like? So, I often wonder, and I ask this to bands, and I'm going to ask you, is like, who is the next Metallica? Who is the next Slipknot? Who's the band we don't know about today that you think could be like one of those bands later? It's hard because like, where are our future heroes? I'm sure people back in the day were like, after Black Sabbath and Ozzy, man, there's not going to be anybody.
Exactly.
And like, there was.
Exactly. Yeah, every era has their their big four. Let's say, like you mentioned Sabbath, you mentioned Zeppelin, and then Metallica and Anthrax, Slayer. We always wonder, like we see the headliners and download and think, okay, when are the new headliners coming? Who's going to be the next ones? And then when you see like a Deftones hitting the main stage or a Killswitch Engage, there we go. They're a main stage band. They're a headliner. And I just love seeing the bands that you started seeing when they were playing small shows of 300 people there. Then all of a sudden, 10 years down the line, they're doing 100,000 at download. It's just awesome to see.
It's killer. We just covered Bloodstock. That's like one of the things Coast Coast always covers. We have a worldwide staff of people because we started out in Europe actually. And I'm like amazed at the young talent out there. And I just like even putting our reviews together as the editor for the site. I'm like looking at these photos of bands, even some bands I've never heard of. I go look them up. I'm like, I got a new favorite band. I love it. So festivals are always fun. If you had to say, and obviously you played a lot of different gigs, do you prefer the small club gig for the sound of your band versus a big festival? Obviously the rush of a festival is incredible, but
yeah, good question. Yeah, I mean, I do love the small shows. I do love the sweaty little grassroots gigs where you've got like 100 people there to 200, and I think you can't beat that. And I think you need to earn your stripes there, really, don't you? You need to do that circuit a few dozen times before you get to play with the big boys. Playing Download for us was amazing. That was I ran off and joked that was the best 34.5 minutes of my life. What a rush. But you've got to earn that. You've got to play those small shows, 100 or so times before you start working your way up. So it's hard to say which ones you preferred, but I'd say that's dedicate yourself to doing killer small shows and then work your way up.
Right on. You guys got to, I don't want to lose the opportunity. You guys got to collaborate with some peers on a couple of tracks, which is really cool. And what I wanted to ask you is, for those tracks, did you kind of write them by themselves and then sort of asked some mates to be on them, or did you write them with those vocalists in mind?
Good question. Well, Jeremy Red Method, who did guest vocals on one of our tracks in the new album. I've known Jeremy since I was a kid. He was one of the guys that got me into metal when I was younger. He was almost like my dealer. He kept feeding me like black metal albums and death metal albums. Like, here's a new Morbid Angel, here's a new Emperor. So I've got a lot of gratitude for him growing up, and we always said that we'd do something together, and then we finally did in this album. So it was more a case of, okay, let's write a whole lot of songs and think, okay, this one sounds like a Jeremy song, let's get him on. So for you guys listening out there, check out Red Method, one of the hottest bands on at the moment. And the other track was with Andreas from Cabal. And Andreas was more recent that we got to know him through, we're both in the same label. And then we heard the album and thought, man, this guy sounds so evil. So sounds so killer. So we need to do something with him. So we got him into for the new album. So that was a bit more short term with Andreas. It was more of a last minute thought of thing. He'll be really good on this track. Whereas Jeremy, we've been talking about it for about 20 years.
Right. And of course, Andreas is in another part of the world. Did you have to like collaborate with
Yeah,
files and stuff like that because of the pandemic? You couldn't be
that's
together.
right. Yeah, that's right. He's based in Denmark, so we had to
Mm.
send everything over to him, and he recorded it himself, and then send that over so we could give it to our producer and mix it in. So yeah, it was first time we've done anything like that, remotely. But yeah, that's the future of music now. This damn pandemic has forced us to do things in different ways, but all of a sudden we realize we can write music in different ways. We don't all have to be in the same country, in the same room to jam something together.
I dig it, man. And Jeremy and Andres are sick, man. I've interviewed Cabal, so like, yeah, terrific bands. And
Awesome.
yeah, I agree with you about Red Method. People are sleeping. They shouldn't be sleeping on that band at all. Cabal people kind of they in Denmark, in like Scandinavia, Germany, those guys headline festivals. They're bigger, I think, in Europe. They're a little more well known than they are here in America. Red Method, I think people have an awareness of a little bigger, and but they shouldn't sleep on.
Oh yeah, yeah, great bands. You definitely need to check them out. I think Red Method recently played Bloodstock. I saw some of the videos and like, God, they just annihilated the stage. Great guys to see live.
Right? Ooh, so good. As we wind this down, I also want to shout out your album artwork. In this day and age when people are doing very grim and like dark artwork and just very, crazy scenes. I love the like little mystical, positive, warm album cover that you guys have. It's like the little warm center of the candy.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we really tried our best with that artwork. We worked with this Greek guy called Janis, who's is an absolute genius, and we wanted to create this imagery of a world on fire. So he did a few mock-ups for us, and we immediately thought, yeah, this looks awesome. Let's go with this guy.
Right on, man. It's beautiful, and it's good. It's like I find myself saying this a lot. It's rare to find a band that has a very fully formed visual sense early in their career, because it takes time to get the right logo. It takes time to get the right, what's our imagery like? When you make an album cover, that's on your shirts, that's on your scrims, that's on your banner behind you. So artwork's important. I love this artwork, man. It's really one of the better pieces of the summer for sure, and it feels very summery. The record isn't. The record's definitely like a winter, but the album cover is a summer. You know what I'm saying?
That's good. I would like that contrast.
Yeah. Well, I'm all about those things. I'm a writer, so that's all I have is my senses to go to. As we wrap up, man, you've been terrific. I love to end these with a wild card question. So the one I have chosen for you, I like to call "Day Job for a Cowboy," which is because it's not very puns. I have them, dad jokes. What is the worst day job you ever had before you got into doing music full time or mostly full time?
The worst day job I ever had. I used to clean pots at a canteen at a university near where I lived. So that was when I was flat ass broke and earning like fucking next to nothing for an hour's work, and it was scrubbing pots and pans. That was my first real job, and I hated it. I think I lasted about 3 weeks. And then I was out of there.
That's tough. That's tough. Yeah. I mean, hard work, doing stuff you'd rather not do to get to where you want to go do what you want to do in life is a lot of us. So all respect there. Maybe toughen up the hands a little bit for some shredded.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Mark from the 500, man. It's been terrific catching up with you. The new record is out now on Long Branch Records. And just good luck to you, man. Please keep being safe. And I sincerely hope you get out there and tour, and maybe we'll get to catch you in Europe on tour, or maybe we'll get you to the States next year when things are a little easier.
Thanks a lot, Keith. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.